Hey everybody, welcome to the Sheepdog Project. Doc here. With me in the studio today, I have a very special co-host, combat infantryman, podcast host in his own right. What's your official title at VO?
Director of Operations.
Director of Operations for Veterans Outdoors.
I tried saying it deeper too to get it like director.
We need some reverb on that.
Yeah.
Director of Operations. Shuns.
Yeah.
And he's also Canadian.
100% to this
He's
day,
Canadian.
card carrying.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. This man's a Canadian, and yet he is more red-blooded American than probably 90% of the people out there, including our Sheepdog audience. And this man's a Canadian. So he didn't have the luxury of being born here, but he fucking got here as fast as he could, by God.
Yeah. Well, and to Texas.
Yes. To Texas specifically.
The one thing that is official and there's documentation of is I am a Texan.
Yeah.
Not by birth, but by decree.
And let's be honest. You know, I love America, but that supersedes and I'm wearing my so how fitting, I'm wearing my Texas America's Sparta t-shirt.
By Ranger Up.
I'm sorry everybody, but if the rest of you guys, if the other 49 are going down, as many of you as possible that are patriotic red-blooded Americans bound back to Fob, Texas, okay? We will take care of you. Okay? We got plenty of room, okay?
I mean, I think Texas has been an international rally point for centuries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's strategically located, right? I mean, it's not in the middle of the United States. We're kind of south middle, right?
Got a coast.
But we got a coast. We got a border with another country. You know, we got Mexico to the south.
Bountiful natural resources. A proud history
of
winning.
Of winning.
A winning history.
You know, depending on which historian you talk to, it's debatable which side Texas was on in the Civil War. Like, I've literally heard it both ways.
Right, but there's no official they joined.
Right. Right. It's like little factions went off. Yeah. And I ran into some Civil War recreation guys here, and one of them, but the last battle of the Civil War did occur in Texas.
Truth.
Because they didn't know, obviously didn't have internet back then, so they didn't know.
You know, without Twitter,
right? There's
countries right now in, say, like the Dark Continent in the Middle East that wouldn't know that they're still at war.
No, absolutely.
It's like, you know, without the internet, they'd still be fighting. Yeah, they still might be. Before we get too deep into that, because
we'll pick up right there. But before we get too deep into that, I got to do some housekeeping up front because I promise the people that pay the bills that we'll do this. So I want to talk about our upcoming Sheepdog courses. So right around the corner, August 22nd through 26th, we're in Post Falls, Idaho. And when I say we, I mean the Sheepdog team. I'm not specifically going to be there. This is all going to be done out of Trevor Prangley's gym. If you don't know who Trevor Prangley is, lose my number, because a very accomplished mixed martial artist, all-around great guy, and a member of the Sheepdog team for quite a long time now. We're going to run an occupational level 1 course, Sheepdog level 1 course, and an occupational carbine course. And the incomparable Mr. Travis Lloyd, we call him Tactical Jesus, will probably be the one, I assume, supervising all the firearms training, and he's quite amazing. You should definitely, if you're anywhere near Post Falls, Idaho, you should go check that out. That's August 22nd through 26th. Then in the month of September, 21st through 23rd, in Hoffman, North Carolina, there's going to be a Sheepdog level 1 course and an occupational level 1 course. And I'm not going to promise you that Tim Kennedy's going to be there, but I'm just going to say, yeah, Tim Kennedy's probably going to be there. So you should definitely go check that one out. A lot of good red-blooded American patriots in North Carolina, bastion of airborne and special operations forces, good chance for you to go get your training on. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what tier level you are. That's a good opportunity for you to go get some additional training with some great individuals. In the month of October, we are going to be in Palm Bay, Florida. We're running an occupational level 1 course and a SOTEC level 1 course. For those of you who don't know, of course, SOTEC is the Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care. That's the trauma medicine course that I run. That's October 8th through 11th. This is not a private course, which is why we're advertising it, but it's a partially closed course and limited slot course. So if you're anywhere near Palm Bay, Florida, you better jump online as we speak and try to enroll in that. And I expect to see you there. The week before SHOT Show, so on or about January 16th through 20th, actually extended a little bit from that. I think back that up a couple of days, probably the 14th. We're going to be running a Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care course, a Sheepdog Level 1 course, an Occupational Level 1 course, and an Occupational Carbine course. And this is going to run us right into the amazing week that is SHOT Show. So one more bit of housekeeping before we get started. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast, as always. If you haven't done so, whatever carrier that you're using, whether it's iTunes, Podcast, Podbay, Stringbean, I don't know. There's a ton of them out there. I don't even know what they're all called. Don't just download the podcast as they come available. Don't just skim through them and pick and choose the ones that you want to listen to. Subscribe to the podcast and click download all. I want you to download all those episodes. Okay. What that does for us is that gives us higher visibility. Higher visibility means more people are listening to the podcast. We're getting the news out to more people like you. That means also that we can attract more and better guests and bring you exactly what you want to hear and what you need to hear to make you better sheepdogs. So I want you to do that. I want you to pause this podcast right now, and I want you to do that. And then as soon as you're done doing that, whatever carrier that you're on, I want you to write us a whopping 5-star review. And if you write a really good review that really sticks out and amuses me, I will read it on the air next episode. So I encourage you to do that. So let's get back to what we were talking about.
Well, first, I think the only way that you can improve upon a 5-star review is I named my child. Like if you put
I have kids named Mike and Tim.
Yeah,
I have twins.
Or I have our dog is Sheepdog.
Yeah,
is called Response.
Yeah,
all the project. All the different things. No, outside of a 5-star review, if you're not going to do 5, we're in the wrong business.
Yeah, if we're not doing 5, I had a medical director that I worked for, and he used to have. This is before we had all the official. Critique forms that people go online and fill out or that they hand out. He had his own, and he would tell people, he said, if you can't give me 5 stars, he said, don't go home and mail this. You tell me right now, and I'll try to fix whatever it is right here on the spot. And I think that's important. I think and I agree. If we're not doing 5 stars, I can tell you a couple of times we've gotten 4-star reviews. It's been. One of them specifically was because of our equipment. Yeah, it said something. It said, I can hear one of you breathing.
I think all the complaints about my podcast are all Bush League technical issues because we are straight Bush League.
Well, that's dude.
In comparison to this, the mightiness.
Well, hey,
the mightiness.
I'm blessed to have this, and I still do it on the MacBook, and that's what I people that are thinking about getting in podcasting. I'm a little bit confused by the new GarageBand software. You don't use GarageBand, right? What do you use?
Not anymore. No, we use a conglomeration of a couple different things. Yeah. But in terms of the music and the splicing and stuff like that, we try to do it as much on the dashboards of Spreaker or whatever platform that we're using.
I was amazed at number one how easy GarageBand was to use out of the gate. Mm-hmm. The effects that it already had some sound, already had some music and sound in it. Really, you could just sit and without even doing anything else, you could run, it might not be the best podcast in the world. And when I was starting out, I really enjoyed the process. When I started Mind of the Warrior, I really enjoyed the process. I liked looking for music, finding the music that I was going to use. I found a website that had people that would do your narrator stuff, your voiceovers, doing all that stuff.
No, Mind of the Warrior was a good show.
I had a lot of fun with that.
And you did, just like this show. You have solid. You got the movie guy. Yeah. In a world where Tim and Doc are talking into microphones, will they go too far? I've gone too far. No, they. You have the good stuff. It's the production is great. It's a great show. But let's get back to where we're at.
So people around the world, when you talk about people around the world not knowing, and that's something that Americans have a hard time understanding, and you and I have talked about this very subject before, is that a guy herding sheep in the Hindu Kush. He doesn't know if an armistice was declared yesterday. He doesn't know if so-and-so decided to team up with so-and-so. He doesn't necessarily know the name of the guy who calls himself his president.
No.
And he doesn't care. Because, you know, that doesn't help his sheep graze. That doesn't shear the wool for him. That doesn't put wood on his fireplace, food on his table. So he just doesn't give a shit.
Now, when I was a kid, I was a Bob Newhart fan because my dad enjoyed.
Bob Newhart was awesome.
My dad enjoyed him, and he had an album, a vinyl album that we used to listen to. That was monologues, and one of the monologues on this one album that we had were two Germans talking back and forth from a remote location, finding out that the war was over. And, you know, it always made me chuckle and laugh because I was like, how could someone not know, like Nazis? How could the Nazis be somewhere that they did not know that the war was over? And then, you know, I lived close to Alaska, and then I moved to Alaska. That was, you know, my entrance in the United States. And, you know, there were Japanese that landed within the Aleutian chain, got left there, and had no idea that post-war was post-war.
Right.
And, you know, and then they obviously ended up perishing, and there's some great literature out there on like the forgotten wars, it's called out there. But no, it's interesting how some things are important and some things aren't. And the relevance of it, like you said, in the Hindu Kush, the guy that's, you know, pushing his sheep or his goats or whatever around, whether there's a new leader or a war going on is not moving his needle. It's the grazing doesn't grow faster. It doesn't affect the shearing, and it doesn't affect him transporting that to market in some capacity. And then there's other places where information is everything, and it's crazy how like that is. But there are places in the world right now where people have no idea who their leaders are, why their leaders are their leaders, and are contributing in no way to a overall society. And even though, you know, we joke about it, there's places like that within the United States of America.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's subsistence villages in the Everglades of Florida that probably don't care or know about what's going on. There's places in Alaska that are subsistence. There's compounds throughout other states, but there are places where people are just so detached from that. On one hand, I'm envious. You know, on the other hand, I'm like, how can this be that you're so detached from the rest of humanity?
It's bizarre. I mean, in the information age, it's bizarre that it's so the disparity. That on one hand, you and I with the, you know, our smartphones and anybody else can be just inundated with information. It was so inundated that the news cycle is only like 12 hours now. It's not even 24 hours. It's practically in 12 hours. It's like, oh, that's old news. We're not even talking about that. We moved on to something else. And yet, you know, on this same rock hurling through space, there are people that don't know we landed on the moon and don't care. So, and I can remember when I first got to SF, my team sergeant talking about in the 70s and 80s working with some of our allies in Central and South America, and him making a comment. They were teaching like a commo class, and there was a comment about, you know, if you do this, and, you know, you do this, and, you know, this is the same. It's the same principle of how we talked to the astronauts when they were on the moon. And all these guys laughed. They're like, "Yeah, the moon, yeah, whatever." And he's like, "No, you know, like when we went to the moon." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, you went to the moon." And he's like, "No, like not me personally, but, you know, America, we put a man on the moon." And he said, the guy asked him, he goes, "Is there like food or anything on the moon?" He's like, "No." He said, "Then why would you do that?"
Why would you go there? Like,
why would you go there?
The hunting's amazing.
And he's like, I had no answer for that. like, why would you go there?
Well, priorities, right? You
Right.
know, like,
yeah. First world problems,
Yeah.
right? It's first world accomplishments, first world problem. It's like, hey, I'm just worried about, it's rainy season's a week away, and I got a lot of thatching to do.
Yeah.
That's that's their main problem, and we're all about, hey, how are we going to bounce this signal? Hey, we're going to lose signal on the dark side of the moon, so we have to have a plan for that. We have to have contingencies for that. It's one of my favorite movies probably of all time is Apollo 13.
Oh, strong.
Okay. But when you think about it, and that says something too about the value that we, not only do we place a higher premium on life, but we place an even higher premium on death that could potentially occur in the public space. So the idea that we were going to lose 3 Americans in space, whereas, you go to some of these countries, a lot of sub-equatorial countries, and it's like, hey, what if there were 3 guys trapped in a car and they were on a ledge up, on a cliff somewhere? Well, inshallah, I don't know. I guess they're probably going to die. We had an entire country riveted, and thank God we brought, those 3 brave astronauts home. And it's an incredible story. But if you think about it in that lens, it's and another example of this, when JFK Jr. crashed in the ocean,
right? And
we spent $2 million looking for that plane crash, and it's like, why? Why did we spend $2 million? We know he's dead. It's been greater than 48 hours that they've been adrift with no life-saving gear in a horrendous storm. The possibility of life is zero. Like literally, we're going to spend $2 million looking for plane wreckage.
So it's interesting. I was having this conversation just the other day with somebody, or a similar conversation. The efforts that were put in, the extraordinary, bold, and audacious efforts that were put in to bringing those astronauts home. Mm-hmm. I too enjoy Apollo 13. I've got to go to the control room at NASA in Houston a couple years ago. A good friend of mine works there, and I kind of fanboyed a little bit about the opportunity to be in that space where these people, not just like the control room, but also the floor of the building where they were like experimenting to try and figure this stuff out. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the audaciousness, the ingenuity, and everyone knows necessity is the mother of invention. And seeing how that went down is just inspiring. And yes, those efforts, those bold, audacious, inspiring efforts were done for 3 people, mm-hmm. 3 very special people. But arguably, you could take anywhere else in the world and they'd be like, well, they're just 3 people.
Right.
We just saw that recently in Thailand.
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that I was just recently having. It's like, now we have this public spectacle.
Mm-hmm, because it's in the public sphere.
Right. And it was a compelling story. We have these young boys, mm-hmm. A soccer team, mm-hmm. which, whose kid, for the most part, think of the high percentage of kids whose introduction to sports globally is soccer first.
Sure.
More kids play youth soccer mm-hmm. than any other sport globally.
Both of my boys started. That was their very first sport.
Northern Canada, I found my way into youth soccer. Mm-hmm. So this youth aspect, this public aspect, everyone could understand, everyone could feel that compassion. And now all of a sudden, some of the brightest minds in the world come out, Elon Musk and all these minds come out, and they came up with an ingenious way of getting them out submerged, mm-hmm. in cocooning them and encompassing them, and like all that stuff.
Elon Musk is Tony Stark.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. But it's like, that was the public's pressure. Mm-hmm. That was not the love for 13, 17 boys underground. That was part of it. Right. But it was the public pressure of like, death in public is right. Scary.
Yeah.
And when you have that aspect to it, people tend to like move further, to do more. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, and as you were younger, some of the things that captured the headlines outside of, guys driving around in white, Broncos, was also kids in wells, or kids in where all of a sudden, like, we got to save this baby.
The little girl in the well.
You know,
and a lot of the listeners probably don't remember the little girl in the well.
Jessica, baby Jessica, maybe?
Baby Jessica, and that captured an entire nation with the little girl in the well. We got water coming in. We had a water resupply because it's 103 degrees in Austin. You know, you are a steely-eyed missile man, and I thank you.
You got to hydrate or die. My daughter has a cheer. You know, she's like, water, H2O, dehydration. No. So
that's awesome.
But no, it's interesting how, like, you throw that public aspect into it, and it's a really big deal. Inversely, you keep it behind closed doors, and it's got to stay behind closed doors.
Right.
And the same amount of audaciousness and boldness will go into hiding the fact that Benghazi.
Right.
Several other.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, now this hasn't happened in the public eye. Or it happened too late for the public eye to know about it. Now we have to keep it out of the public eye.
Right.
But, you know, like, I was inspired by the efforts that happened in Thailand. You know, because you're sitting there going, like, man, Elon Musk is getting involved. Like, he is Tony Stark. You're like, you know, he's a modern day financial superhero because, you know, he's what Walt Disney thought of when he thought of his Imaginarians. You know, like, not scientists, not astronauts, Imaginarians. Like, if you can imagine it, we can build it. Right. If you can imagine it, we can solve it. And I love seeing, like, that aspect of the human condition because people really respond well to it. But it's that public pressure. If it was behind closed doors, like, let's not let people know.
Well, it wasn't that Rwanda was not that long ago. And how many Tutsis died in Rwanda? I think I'm saying that right. Tutsis.
Yeah, the Hutus and Tutsis. Yeah.
300,000
ish. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the neighborhood of
a very short period of time. Too.
In a very short period of time, and hardly made the news cycle then. You don't really hear about it now. And that's 300,000 people. You know, that's not just, 13 people in a cave somewhere, or 4 Americans in Benghazi, or 3 Americans up in space. And it's always, part of it is too, is when you know the names of people. America, going back to Apollo 13, those were America's heroes. Everybody knew, I guarantee during the period of the original 7, the Mercury astronauts, every American just about could name all 7 Mercury astronauts. When the new 9 came in, maybe not as much. By the time the Apollo, through Gemini, maybe not. By the time Apollo, no, probably not. But once they were up there, everybody knew. And they didn't have the internet back then, but what would have happened is the moment, Houston, we have a problem, the Google searches for each one of those names, the Wikipedia pages would have been inundated with, now I want to know everything I can about this guy, right? And they did, they were interviewing family members and everything else. All of a sudden people knew intimate details about Colonel Lovell. They knew that that he had a daughter in high school, that he had a son attending a military preparatory academy, what neighborhood his family lived in Houston. They live in Marble Falls. Do you know that?
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Colonel Lovell lives and his wife live in Marble Falls, just up the road.
Still alive.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard of him passing, and I know as of a couple of years ago.
I'd like to meet that dude.
I heard he's really cool.
Yeah,
I heard he's
gotta be.
And I heard he's exceedingly humble.
Well,
like he doesn't walk in like Jim Lovell, Apollo 13. None of that.
No big deal.
Yeah, here I am.
Do you have a drink special, for the guy that came back from space?
Yeah.
In Apollo 13.
You may have heard about it in Apollo 13. I'm much better looking than Tom Hanks in person. But when we know people's names too, that personalizes it, and we tend to personalize people that we see in the media. We tend to personalize. We assign attributes to sports heroes. One of my biggest, 2 of my biggest sports heroes are Pittsburgh Steelers. Rocky Blyer.
Oh, that's my number. Well, he's my number one too.
And Jerome Bettis.
Oh,
the bus.
He's lower on my list.
And so I assign, just from what I've seen of them in media, I assign these attributes to them. Like, I think if one of them walked in right now, like, the way they acted and the things they said would not surprise me. And I recognize that that's manufactured, but you do that when you build people up and when you idolize them.
So, Rocky Blyer, gentleman, absolute gentleman. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of projects with him.
Really?
And absolutely adore him. So much that when he hit on my wife, it didn't bother me.
That's a big line to cross. Yeah.
No, we joke about it. He really wasn't hitting on her, but we were at an event and he was sitting at our table next to my wife, and I was busy. And he did a better job entertaining my wife than I did, and my wife always teases me. So you didn't
have to say, "I'll kick your ass, mangled foot and all."
No, but like a lot of people, he's one of the greatest American stories, and he's like, and it's a humbling story, and he's very humbled by it. And what he's done to translate that is amazing. So for those of you that don't know, Rocky Blyer went to the Notre Dame. He went to, or however Notre Dame or Notre Dame, however you care to say it. Got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Weeks later, got drafted by the United States Army. Went over to Vietnam, served as a 11 series, got himself banged up.
Well, 300 series because he was a Marine. He was a Marine.
Oh, yeah. So
yeah, he was an infantryman.
No matter what, he was an infantryman.
Now they're called 300 series. I think they were called something else.
0311s back in the day.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought he was an Army guy, but I'm easily mistaken. But infantry nonetheless, because that's really what matters.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
And got mangled. His foot got damaged, and they told him that he would never be competitive. When he came back, the Roonies, he asked for the opportunity to try out, and they told him out of loyalty, because they drafted him, they would give him the opportunity.
He was Army. That was my mistake, man. How did I make that mistake? He was a specialist. And he went to camp with no promises and nothing like that, and struggled. Yeah.
But they gave him another tryout, which he successfully made special teams.
Yep.
And he, with hard work, dedication, not quitting, found himself as the running back partner to probably the most famous and also a gentleman. And the only reason I actually know Rocky is I met Rocky through Franco.
Really?
And that's actually who I took to NASA. When I went through NASA a couple of years ago, I'll show you the pictures here in a little bit, was with Franco and Rocky and them. And they gave him an opportunity, and that's it.
Yep.
And he seized it. He did well. He is a Bronze Star, which is with V recipient, CIB recipient.
Purple Heart.
Absolutely, Purple Heart. And a lot of that is with a damaged foot. And so a lot of people don't realize that, even if you do know who he is, you don't realize like he basically has an amputation with the mangling of his foot, and he became one of the most famous running backs with the Steelers, as a running partner with Franco Harris. And then he fell on hard times. Back then the salaries were not what they were. When he came out, he struggled with a lot of things, and he'll tell you in not necessarily in confidence, but he'll tell you in the right setting, in the right audience, that a lot of the reasons why he struggled is because he struggled with the effects of war. And, I can't imagine going through a pretty hard jungle tour, getting jammed up, and then coming back and then trying to be a professional football. I mean, if you're opposite ends of the spectrum, I don't know if you could think of one. And being attending a wonderful college with like Notre Dame. I mean, like there's a lot to that. Pawned his rings, and the Roonies and Franco went back and got his rings out of Hawk and got him straightened out. He's one of the best redemption stories that America has that a lot of people don't know about.
He could have. There were multiple points that he could have gotten a deferment, some type of back channel deferment, and either not served at all or said, hey, you know what? I've got a college education. I didn't go to ROTC, but I'll take a reserve commission, right? And I'll be in the Pennsylvania National Guard or whatever it might be. And he didn't do any of those things.
No, he never slid from his responsibility. He met everything face on, and his contributions to the veteran community today are strong. He was on the board of directors of Victory Point Media, which does Vetrepreneur magazine, is GI Jobs and stuff like that. He personally sponsored the U.S. amputee softball team. And so if you go to the Super Bowls, you'll see that there's a bunch of wounded warriors, current day wounded warriors that play a flag football team against Hall of Famers. That's Rocky Blyer's initiative.
That's awesome.
He great guy. And he came and he delivered a speech, a really good speech for Soldiers Angels one time when I was the executive director of that. And then he and Franco brought myself and another guy up to Pittsburgh to participate in the Shanksville. I almost said Shawshank. Pardon me. The Shanksville initiative, to which himself, Mr. Rooney. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He was the very first Secretary of Homeland Security. He was the former governor of Pennsylvania. It's right on the tip of my tongue. So they secured the land because Shanksville, where United Flight 93 went down, was private land. They secured that land and got it protected as a national park, and then raised the money to put a memorial site on it and protect it so that it would never be disrespected. And the reason why he did that, now I'll never forget what he said, and every time someone talks about September 11th, this is one of the very first things that comes to mind, is that they were the first people to fight in the War on Terror, and not a single one of them was sworn in service.
Right.
Yeah. It was just civilians. Not a single one of them was sworn in service. The whole Let's Roll were just everyday Joe and Mary that got after it.
Yep.
And that's like, you and I enjoy a good fight. And maybe every now and then we've been trained on how to do something in a fight. But going after a guy with a box cutter that's got the fervor, like that's not the fight. When you pick a fight outside a bar, that's not the guy you pick a fight with.
Right.
And
with a peanut cart and a positive attitude was literally all that they were on.
That's all they had.
And that sounds joking. I'm not making light of that, but that's big brass ones right there. That's hey, this is all or nothing. This is, and the fact that it wasn't and you can hear in the recording of that phone call, it's not. Most of us are going to cower up here, and 2 or 3 are going to go. It's like,
we're going.
Let's go. You in? I'm in. Let's go. Roll. We're going. Big deal. So.
No, like and to see people come together to celebrate that and to protect that and to honor that is nice. What was sad at the time was that it took private citizens to do that, and I was like really impressed. And they leveraged everything. One of the fundraising events that I got to attend with Rocky was at Heinz Field, and they brought in their season ticket, the big season ticket holders, the big box owners. They brought them in, and they were like, "And here's why you need to give money." And he gave the speech about the people that did this deserve it, and this is on our soil. Like, let's do right by them, and it's. When you have someone with such a strong connection to service, it never leaves. And here he is, a Hall of Famer, 4 or 5 ring wearer.
4 ring. Yeah.
4 ring wearer. still finding ways, to be positive and do positive things. He could be sitting on his laurels. They made a Hallmark movie about him. He could be cashing that check and, but that's not what he's doing. Yeah. He's still out there looking out for guys that have worse situations than him, and being an advocate and a champion for them. He's not a Super Bowl champion. He is 4 times, but he is a champion of other things. Right. And he'll be
a champion in life.
And he'll be the one to tell you that. Like, what I really am is a champion of this.
Right. Speaking of veteran success stories and veteran transitions, especially, you talked about the transition that Rocky had and the rocky time that Rocky had with his transition. That's your wheelhouse. That's, Veterans Outdoors. Talk about what you guys have coming up. Veterans Outdoors, for those of you that don't know it, and you're vetransoutdoors.com?
Veteran Outdoors.
Veteranoutdoors.com. Sorry. Yeah. Veteranoutdoors.com. When this podcast is over, make sure you check it out. They're doing amazing things. What do you guys have coming up?
So we, first and foremost, we try to present an opportunity for deserving veterans to experience something that's positive involving the outdoors. One of the reasons why it's involving the outdoors is because most war fighters, most people that are involved in the craft of war fighting, do it outdoors. And, when you were at, Harmony Church and, coming up, like bivouac, right? That was, and you became strangely and oddly comfortable being outside. You felt more secure in the outdoors than you did indoors. Like, you did not feel secure in the barracks, probably because you were at Harmony Church and they were probably sad.
Yeah. Dude, that was.
I was at Sand Hill, so I lived in luxury.
When they told you, they said, we had one of these caught on fire, and from spark to embers, it was 8 minutes. So you got 8 minutes to get everybody out of that building.
That's not good. That's not good. That's not a good number. But we as war fighters feel comfortable in the outdoors. And so what we're trying to do, and our goal and our mission, is to demonstrate the therapeutic effects of being outdoors. And we usually, wrap it with something exciting, like be it a hunting event or a hunting adventure or a fishing adventure or a hike. But the biggest thing that we're doing is we're getting guys and gals to a place where they feel comfortable. They can drop the vulnerability a little bit. They can be authentic, and in the security of the great outdoors, we're able to minister into their lives in a positive way and encourage them to think and to know that just because either A, they got banged up or beat up, that they're still fully capable of what they did before that event happened. Be it an injury, physical or mental or emotional, you are the same person that you were before. Now you have a different lens that you might look at things, and you might think you might not have the same capabilities, but nothing gives me pleasure more than seeing a guy or a gal's light bulb go off going, oh, I was just feeling sorry for myself. One of my favorite trips that, we don't talk about a lot, but Tim served with a real good gentleman, a warrant officer by the name of Dan Carlton. And I think Danny. He's a great guy. Several different circumstances involving Purple Hearts and devices of valor. I mean, he's an impressive warrant officer. He's an impressive guy, impressive special forces operator. And he's got one leg that's partially gone. He's got another leg that's in limb salvage. And we took him to the mountains, the steep mountains of New Mexico. And we chased some bears around, literally chasing bears. And this bear went up this cliff. And Tim and I kind of looked at each other. And it was like, that's a cliff. Our guide, shout out to Casey Smith. That dude's as cowboy as it gets, and he'll ask you how cowboy you are. But we were gonna wave off that bear and go back to base camp and, refit and, try our luck on another day. And Dan was like, no, we've come this far. And we were, probably 12 miles from our base camp at that point in time. And, they were like, all right, we're going to go get this thing. And you see a guy scale a cliff that you don't want scaled, or you don't want to scale, and chasing an apex predator, accomplishing it. Like we got back to camp, and I arrived back at camp early, but when Dan was by the fire that night, he just sat there and he wept for a few moments, and he was like, thank you, and it's like, thank you for what? Putting you in a crappy situation for this horrible meal I'm cooking over fire right now. But he was just like, man, I just never put my life in that perspective before. And it's like, yeah, like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you that perspective, and it's a hard way to explain. That's a long ways around it, but that's what we do. We're very fortunate that we've been able to take people on adventures in Alaska. We've taken people to the mountains of northern British Columbia, where I'm from. We've done things in not every state, but a lot of states. We haven't done North Dakota yet, but we've done South Dakota, and we're doing it here in a couple months. But deserving guys and gals from all time periods. We've been fortunate enough to take from the Korean War, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, the Balkans, and obviously the War on Terror. That's, I don't want to say our focus is the War on Terror, but that's where there currently seems to be the greatest need. Today we wrapped up a Vietnam infantry 11 Bravo double leg amputee, and I can't believe what that guy endured between point of injury and time now. Our guys now, the Center for the Intrepid, Walter Reed, Bethesda, Bilboa, when you look at the four major polytrauma units, Minnesota, Tampa, Alta Vista, when you Audie Murphy in San Antonio, when you look at what's available to guys and gals coming back now, like we can do amazing things.
Yeah, I was working with Crispy earlier in the week.
Yeah,
and he and I were talking about that. So,
I've taken Crispy on a couple of adventures. In fact,
he's an adventurous guy.
He, in fact, he probably won't ever admit it, but one of the reasons he's does a lot of the hunting that he does and has gone the way that he's going in terms of hunting is I would say probably a direct result of his exposure with Veteran Outdoors.
Awesome.
Omar's a great dude. Some of his, some of the guys that, we've done like that, like Jay Fain, with an amazing amputation inside the pelvic area. I don't know if you've met Jay or not,
no.
But, our criteria though isn't you don't have to be wounded. A lot of organizations have a formula. You got to be 30% this or whatever. We use the word deserving because you and I both know guys with all their fingers and toes that deserve it a lot more than some other guys and gals.
Yeah.
And so we do that, and we're getting ready to come into the busy season. And so even though I'd like to think that it is the busiest season, we are year round, but hunting season seems to be a little bit more. We do more volume, and pretty excited about that. And you've been able to come and meet some of our folks and hang out with some of our awesome people. And no, it's neat. I find myself that it's a cathartic experience.
We're coming up on autumn, and autumn's a busy time for you. I know that. Have you done anything? We're coming out of the summer, so it wouldn't be this year. But have you done anything with Hooligan Charters? Are you familiar with them? So Bobby Dove is a guy that runs Hooligan Charters. I had him on Mind of the Warrior. So he's a former 18 Delta, double amputee, arm and a hand,
bilateral,
contralateral, I believe. It's hard. So Bobby and I have never been in the same room together. I've interviewed him and I've read all about him. He's one of the wounded warriors that is in George W. Bush's collection of paintings.
Yeah.
He's golfing. Bobby's golfing.
Yeah.
And he runs a company called Hooligan Charters, and they're not about, they're not specifically about, hey, let's bring veterans out and fish. They're a fishing boat.
Yeah.
They're a charter fishing boat. But run by a guy who with a very exceptional story.
I need to get
partner
connected.
with guys. That would be a great company for you to partner with, because talk about somebody that you could put somebody on his boat and he'd be like, hey man, I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm gonna have to hook you guys up. I don't know why I never thought of that before.
No, I love that stuff specifically. We had Crispy take a couple of guys out. Because same thing. Like, you're not going to look at me and complain about how bad you have it if I'm here doing it. I always make fun of him and his crip grip. Because he's like can lift the heavy weights. He likes to sling the steel around. Yeah. And he's got that crip grip. He's able to do it. Yeah. And I remember now he's shooting bows. But like
it's got to be challenging.
Back a couple of years back, he wasn't able to do that. So we outfitted him with a crossbow. So he could get into archery and start getting the mindset in terms of shot placements and all that stuff. But no, I love that stuff. The guy we have out on the West Coast, John Kaiser, a guy that served with me, 11 series, took a piece of 120 shrapnel. He was a striker commander. We were in the 1st of the 23rd Infantry together. One of the very first striker unit, the first striker unit, and 120 detonated next to the vehicle. Shrapnel came up, embedded, deep in facial embed, lost, destroyed ocular socket, jaw, upper and lower jaw, lost his eye. A pretty significant embed. If 100% unemployable, retired, and he takes veterans fishing 5 days a week. He's the one to help, and that's his thing. And, we can send people to him and same thing. When you look at somebody, you're like, yo, you don't know how hard I have it. Yeah. Tell me about that. What are you doing that's positive now? Like, what are you doing to get off this X? And that's the biggest thing in the veteran transition space, I think. I'm very fortunate. I'm excited. I'm a speaker at the Vet Expo that the Gallant Few are doing here in Dallas. I really think you should get involved there. I think there's an opportunity. It's mid-October. I'll shoot you the dates and link you up with the team there, because, in fact, I've already recommended they link up with you, because I think you're a dynamic personality for that room. But we get stuck on X's. Yeah. And yet we know, be it Harmony Church or be it Sand Hill or be it wherever you started your military journey, Camp Pendleton or Lejeune or whatever it might be, one of the very first things you were taught was don't linger on the X. Yeah. Get off of it. And even though that's our battle drill, react to ambush, turn, get off the X, whatever it is, get off the X. We get out and we transition. We linger on it. Yeah. We linger on it. And that causes so much trouble.
It's, I tell people this, we tell people this in Sheepdog, in all of our courses. I tell them in SOTEC. And Tim likes to say, you move or you die, right? When it comes to a gunfight, you move or you die. And when I'm teaching SOTEC, I always say, if you're taking fire, because you don't treat on the X, right? You don't treat, care under fire is you put a hand over it and get not under fire.
Yeah.
Right?
CCP.
You're right. You move to tactical field care phase. So what I tell people is, okay, you might not know where a safe place to be is, but if you're getting shot where you currently are, you damn sure know
not there
where the non-safe place is. So your choice is go back to the last place you were not getting shot or power through it. And that's a lesson in life too. It's if it sucks where you are currently, well, what was I doing a month ago that didn't suck? Is it a toxic relationship? Is it a toxic substance? Is it a toxic life pattern? Did I take something out of my life that needs to be brought back in? Okay, that's one way of looking at it. Another way is, if I'm in the process of transition, what's my 50-meter target? What's my 150-meter target? What's my 300? I need to be moving through. we need to assault through this kill zone because our opportunities to die in place. You know, nobody ever became a success by giving up.
Right, and the sad part is we all know the answer.
Right.
Like one of the things I like to share is because some people will, I call them snake oil salesmen, because they're trying to tell you that they have the answer. Like, no, like you already have the answer. You know it. You know, whether you're in a combatives class and you're doing pummel drills, if you don't put your head down and you don't fight through, it hurts to get hit in the face.
Yeah.
And if you want to continue to get hit in the face and continue to get hurt, and backing up ain't helping you.
Right.
You got to fight through. You know the answer. You know you don't linger on the X. You get off it. You don't move, you die. And and when I say we, I'm including myself because I failed miserably at this. You know, I thought I had all the tools and the expertise to not fail at it. And I learned some harsh lessons. And so I think by putting people in a place where they're comfortable, kind of reminding them of that, giving them a demonstration of it, is a nice way of doing it. A classroom with PowerPoint slides, I don't think that's going to be as effective. Now, trying to convince people to support you in this venture is also challenging. You know, because from the outside, sometimes it looks like you're just trying to say thank you in a really cool way. And, you know, there's a ranger that I have the deepest respect for. I love to call him my friend. I believe that, you know, we would agree that we care about each other in the terms of, you know, within the veteran community, and that's Mike Schlitz. I love Ranger Schlitz. And he said something the other day on social media that, you know, kind of stung a little bit. And what it was is like, hey, I see a lot of organizations out there saying thank you and taking guys on these really cool trips, but what are they doing to help them in the transition? And, you know, it stung. And when something stings, it's because there's some truth to it, right? Like when somebody says something to you and it hurts, it's usually because there's some truth behind it.
Well, kudos to you for recognizing that, because most people would react the other way. It'd be like, oh, I'm doing way more than everybody else. You know, at least I'm doing something.
Well,
but
yeah, there's at least we're doing something. Yeah. But, you know, I would say that we're not a hug a vet organization.
Right.
We're a poke you in the chest.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need in the community more, is more chest poking, more knife hands up, saying like, what are you doing? Like, get off the X, you know better. Let me demonstrate this to you, and then let's get you at full combat speed and get you back out in the world. But yeah, no, there's a lot of that where people look at it and they're like, oh, well, that's really cool. And part of it is about the Grateful Nation, and the Grateful Nation definitely helped make a lot of this happen, because in the private sector, money, you know, I don't think that the VA should be spending money on this. I think VA should be spending money on making sure my boy has a better leg. You know, like I think that's you and I've talked about this.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so there's a thin line there, and I think, you know, we have to do a better job telling our story in terms of making sure that people know, like, you know, there's a purpose to it outside of like, hey, you did this thing one time that I wasn't willing to do, and I'm grateful, so here's this opportunity. That's not what it's really about. That's what it is to the support fund, but what it really is like, hey, dude, pull your head out of your fourth point of contact, and let's get you back in society doing something positive. Let's get you off the X. Because when we look at guys that come off the X, look at Crispy.
Yeah.
Look at what he's doing right now. You know, like,
amazing stuff. Yeah. I mean, he's an inspiration to so many, with just, he gets up on every day with a positive attitude about where he's going. He comes out when we're running tactical trauma training, and not only volunteers in 103-degree heat to be in the middle of a live fire, drug out of a vehicle, thrown onto a stretcher, walked down a hill to where if one of those guys' ankle would have buckled, he's going to go ass over tea kettle. Lay there while they do primary and secondary surveys and throw tourniquets on his stump and everything else. And, it's 103, he's banged up, blown up. It's 103 degrees. He's got burn scars. His body doesn't sweat right.
No, he does not.
So, he could be sitting at home in air conditioning and watching TV and doing just fine. We didn't pay him to come out and do that. He jumped at the chance to come out and do that. And because he knows, because he's been on the receiving end of that trauma care, so he knows how important it is. And he also knows that he can give a unique perspective. It's not, when Crispy's in the room, it is not theory. No. This is practice. Yeah. This is how my guys took care of me. And this is why I'm able to stand here today and talk to you about it.
Yeah, and like when you look at the percentage of his body burned, right? So like deal with that injury. He didn't lose his leg till, he was in limb salvage. He just lost his leg, recently.
Yeah.
So it's like he's been in continual trauma and continual recovery for a decade plus, 15 years.
And talk about getting kicked while you're down.
Yeah.
I've already dealt with all this other stuff. Now it's like, hey man, we got to give up on that leg.
Yeah.
So now on top of everything else, you got to learn to walk on a prosthesis. Oh, and on top of everything else, this isn't a nice elective. This is all of the problems that you were having that's causing us to have to amputate this. You're now going to have with that same stump. And I don't think, I look at guys like him and guys like Joey Jones, and I don't think people appreciate how much, I've seen guys take off their prosthetics and wince and, see blood coming from their stump. It's because you can't wait for years to get on that prosthesis. Once it's healed up enough, we got to start training you on it. But every time you're breaking down scar tissue. And, on top of the fact that you're already having neuropathic pain because your brain still thinks there's a foot there, now you're subjecting yourself to more pain. Somebody like Tammy Duckworth, I can only imagine how much pain she's in. And she talks about it. Maybe, hey, God bless her for her service, talks about it at times, maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to say that.
But that's her perspective.
Yeah, that's
right?
her perspective. But the way she vividly describes it, that she still feels like her right foot is there and there is a glowing hot railroad spike being driven through it. Yeah, that's how her brain interprets the pain.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. To her, she recently had a baby. Childbirth must have been almost like a break for her.
Yeah.
To go through that and just to have some discomfort, to take your mind off of that.
Yeah, no, I have zero experience or understanding of phantom pain.
Yeah.
But there's guys, the author of the book, Back in the Fight, Master Sergeant Joe Kabazuski, Joe Cap. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to read a book about a guy that is impressive, read that book. Got himself, injured in the 75th Ranger Regiment, hurt in regiment, and then got himself a spot back in regiment, roped back in.
Yeah.
Like, think of that. The determination that some of these guys, and that's the thing is, when you're around people like that, it pulls the best out of everyone in their sphere of influence. And, that's, I think, guys like Crispy, that's kind of their calling, right? To be able to do that. And Veteran Outdoors is, just very fortunate and blessed to play a small part in a lot of these stories. And
you guys have a fundraising event coming up.
Yeah, we do. We're kind of humble and modest on how we do things, because we're not in the party throwing business. We're in the helping people business, and so like we're very fortunate. We throw a good party though, and
do. And, damn sure do.
And this year, without advertising it in a single location, it sold out. So I didn't even have to print a flyer up. That's how amazing it is.
Sorry, folks, you guys can't come.
But
I'll tell you.
We'll send you some really cool
afterwards.
pictures. We'll send you some cool pictures afterwards. It'll be a really neat room. But while we're on the subject, I want to transition a little bit because I personally believe that loss of appendage is not a handicap. I've witnessed too many people. We just named John Joey, Tammy Duckworth. We listed probably
Bobby
five or six single legs. We just identified however many double legs. I don't believe that's a handicap with the right person, the right attitude.
Right.
And all the people that we've talked about, they don't treat them as handicaps. What do you think about them entering in competitive sports, primarily mixed martial arts? I mean, we got Nick Newell, the Notorious. Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting him and actually got to roll with him a couple years back when he was in the World Series of Fighting. Just while he was warming up before a photo shoot, they needed someone for him to beat up, and Chad was getting his picture. Chad Robichaux was getting his pictures taken at the time, and I was at the World Series of Fighting for Chad, and I don't think he's handicapped. In fact, I think he's. I was really surprised he lost that fight last week or whatever it was on the Tuesday night contenders or Thursday night contenders. But what do you think about that? What do you think about letting? Because we got Joe Cap, perfect example. Wrote back in the Ranger Regiment, a guy in the 23rd Infantry, Sergeant Major John Blue, single leg, back in leadership. Got hurt as a first sergeant, made it all the way, through the academy and didn't medically retire. He retired as a sergeant major. Right. So we know that these people are fully capable, fully functioning. What do you think about them in terms of competition like that?
I think it's going to depend on the individual. I mean, obviously, if you have some type of upper extremity, I don't see any way somebody with a lower extremity, even a single, could be competitive in mixed martial arts. Maybe if you had a really low single, like just a foot, but even then, it's gonna cut down on your mobility so much. It's gonna be something.
Gotta hop.
Yeah, that's going to be something that's going to be easy to take advantage of. Nick Newell has basically proven that an upper, to an extent, is not, it can be dealt with. The big thing that I keep hearing everybody talk about is if he goes up against somebody with a fighting style Wonder Boy, a la Wonder Boy Thompson, and that head kick comes in, is he going to be able to react in time? I don't know. That depends. I don't think we should, if they can get in there and mix it up and they prove that at least to them it's not a limit. Who are we to say no? Who are we to put that safety restraint on somebody?
Was he 18-2?
Yeah.
Show me how many professional mixed martial artists do you know that are 18-2, multiple belt holders?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've seen. I've worked cage side for guys that are 0-3, and I've looked fighters in the face and said, if you ever show up to a fight, I'm fight doctor again. I won't let you fight.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you're fighting.
Yeah.
You've proven to me you don't belong in here by any stretch of the imagination. I will deadline you.
Yeah.
Doctor's discretion.
No, and the reason I pose the question is because I want to prove the point at how staunch a supporter I am for opportunity. We talked about Rocky Blyer, and what he did with the opportunity is phenomenal. But if I can offer opportunities in my life, that's, I think, a good thing. I think that's a contribution in itself, and I think guys and gals, should be offered opportunities. What you do with it is another.
Yes.
Like, I think, like you said, a lower extremity, you're going to have some stability issues. You're going to have some movement issues. We've learned that that's obviously not a disability in traditional jiu-jitsu because, we have several single leg, jiu-jitsu practitioners at high levels. We have I don't know if he won the NCAA or not, but a high level collegiate wrestler with a lower extremity, missing lower extremity. So, but starting on your feet, I guess is a challenge. But I believe in giving them opportunity. And like, I got to tell you, we had one of them punching machines out. We're doing Chad Robichaux and I took a bunch of guys onto Camp Pendleton. Chad being, a former, Force Recon Marine, and then turned professional fighter, now turned, award-winning author and many other things. But, one of the things we took with the World Series of Fighting, they had a punching machine, where you could like punch it and, test your poundage, right? How like the force pound per square inch that, you were generating. And on that day that hit it were Anthony Rumble Johnson, Josh Berkman, trying to think who the other guys were that hit it. Ray Sefo, obviously. And so the order of power went Rumble Johnson, Ray Sefo. I want to say Nick Newell beat Josh Berkman.
Wow. But
the thing is, like, we're hitting with a fist. He's hitting with a straight bone.
Right.
Like, I can imagine being hit by him. Like, it looks, obviously it's, this deformity. But like, dude, that's just like being kicked with a nub. Like there's nothing there to break. It's just straight, like, density.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he got it going, and I was like, like that's dangerous. I would not want to be punched by that. Like,
that's the weakest length in a punch is the bones in your hand. Yeah. I mean, they're really small in diameter. And I had I posted a picture. I had a guy come up with what we call a puncher's fracture, a boxer's fracture, and I took a picture of it. And I posted it in a martial arts forum of which I am a member with the patient's permission, of course. I didn't have his name on the X-ray. And I said, hey guys, this is why it's really important. I know there's a few martial arts out here that still teach this. You can punch with the knuckles of the pinky and ring finger, and this is why you can't. And I knew it was going to happen, and sure enough, it did. All these guys win. It's like, you can condition those bones. No, you can't. You can't. There's no.
It's like, I love the biology behind it too.
Yeah, it's like, you hit sand. No, you can't. You can't do it, because here's the deal. You cannot increase, you go hit sand, go pound sand, go hit sand for 2 years, I'll CAT scan you. You go hit sand for 2 years, come back, I'll CAT scan you again, and we'll see if there's any change in diameter or bone density. And I guarantee it's going to be minimal. I mean, yes, you can do and that's what Thai boxers do with their shins, right? They create micro fractures, and they build up a callus over time. That's totally different. When you're talking about an axial load on a bone that's the same diameter as a pencil, it's, and that's why the fracture, the pathology of the fractures is always the same. And that's why we tape hands is basically, the symbol for fascism is all the wheat,
right,
tied together, and the thought process being is, one stalk of wheat by itself is weak, but if we lash them all together, now they are strong. It's the same with the bones in your hand. When we tape somebody's hands, we're lashing them all together to make them strong, but they still can only take so much. If you push a pencil on end, and I keep pushing, it's going to bend and it's going to break, and that's what's going to happen.
No, like I appreciate the sentiment, if you will, about kickboxers, conditioning that. I'm glad you said that. They're not conditioning it. Where they're creating microfractures that they're hoping the calcium buildup will be bigger and make it a larger object that's more dense.
Right. And more importantly, they're deadening the nerves in their shin.
That's the biggest thing.
That's the big thing.
That's the big thing. Yeah. They're deadening the nerves. And I would say, ask Tyrone Spong how that's worked out for him.
Yeah, not so
Ask
much.
Anderson Silva how that's worked out for him.
Right.
Like these are both egregious. Like if you see, Tyrone Spong in that glory fight where he I can't remember who he kicks, which I should remember that guy's name because he won the fight because Tyrone Spong broke his leg, and that's one of Tyrone Spong's fewest defeats. But I mean, what you do remember is Tyrone Spong's leg. I mean, you remember when Chris Weidman checks Anderson Silva's, and it's whoosh.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's nasty.
You're like that. That's a great sentiment, but that's theoretical. That's not biological, and I can condition that. No, I think I just.
It not only that, but we could go on and on about how the calcium in your body, if you're having a problem with bones, it's your calcium from 12 years ago, it's not your calcium from today, and all this other stuff. They do they cause microfractures? Do they get something of a callus? Yeah, I've seen it on X-rays. But as you pointed out, where if you look at the pathology of where the break occurred in Anderson Silva's leg, he might have had a callus on the front part of that bone that hit the ends of that bone on either side, especially the big weighty end where his foot is, continues to swing. Yeah. And
he breaks it on the backside.
Yeah, so he breaks it on the backside. Primarily it breaks on the backside from bending. Yeah. Which is a bad situation overall, as we know. But I think we're about out of time. So veteranoutdoors.com.
Absolutely.
And Stu and the Nunn podcast.
StuandTheNunn.com. You can check us out there. We're back to Thursday nights. Great lineup of guests coming up. You're past guest. You're a repeat offender.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we like it. But yeah, my partner Stu, he's a former retired 11 series first sergeant. I'm a former senior NCO 11 series, and we tackle things that are anything from national security to veteran initiatives, as well as just current events and getting our giggle on some of the funny things that happen in the world. But we're having a show coming up. I got to let you know when it is. That might not be on a regular Thursday night, honoring Sergeant First Class John Lalia.
Yeah, got to talk about John.
So we got a couple guys lined up for that because we met and our show came out of our friendship that grew within the mill blogging community. And John was one of the guys early on with us doing that, and special guy. And so a lot of the mill blogging community guys like Matt Burden, who created the website Black 5, as well as Mark Seavey, his partner with This Ain't Hell. Yeah. So we're looking forward to being able to talk and honor a guy that did a lot to keep a lot of people honest. Yeah. And I noticed you've been kind of taking up that torch. You've been like,
I've kind of fallen into that.
You've been like, and today's contestant.
Well, people keep. Here's the thing: is we'll talk about this briefly, and then we got to get out of here. But for whatever reason, it's the Facebook Stolen Valor guys put way more work into it. It seems the Twitter Stolen Valor guys. Some of them, it's like they're not even trying.
No, they're
it's
not.
Like, because it's so easy. I can create a Twitter profile in 5 minutes, and I can write something up there, and I can find a fake picture on the internet, and I can throw it up there, and it doesn't. It's not like a Facebook. I encounter a phony SF guy on Facebook. I look. Does he have all these SF photos? Does he have ones legit that? Oh yeah, okay, that looks like the same guy in the profile picture, and this is me deployed somewhere. Or does he have all of the generic, the Task Force Dagger pictures and all these, all the generic,
which we recently saw that.
And then, okay, who's on his friend list? So I have yet to see an SF guy on Facebook, whether he's Vietnam era, whether he's GWAT era, that I don't share at least 10 friends with.
Yeah.
At least 10. At least. So it's like, all right, I can't verify any of his pictures. He's got a picture of him wearing his dress blues that was obviously taken in his garage when he's in his late 50s, not when he was on active duty.
With the wrong
so he has
tabs.
no active duty. Yeah, he has no active duty pictures. He has pictures of him basically playing dress up to go to father-daughter school day. And he has no SF guys on his friend list. But usually a lot of them put a little bit more effort into it. They're the guys who go out and buy the uniforms and everything else.
But one of the things, like the difference between Facebook and Twitter, the guys that are on Facebook, they're trying to live a lie.
Right.
The guys on Twitter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the vast majority that I've seen that are stolen valor on Twitter, they're not there to live a lie. They're there to discredit.
Yes, they're there to forward an agenda.
Yeah,
they're like,
they are not.
I'm gonna dress in borrowed robes, to borrow the line from Macbeth. I'm gonna dress.
I was about to say Julius Caesar. But
yeah, I'm gonna dress in borrowed. Why dost thou dress me in borrowed robes? I'm gonna dress in borrowed robes so that I can jump into credibility in this conversation and say, this is my political stance because of, and I'm going to tell you something.
That's 100% Vote Vet's agenda.
Well, but you know what?
that's
last three guys I've voted out. I voted out the last three guys that I've exposed on Twitter, all right wing.
Really?
All. When I look at the things they're retweeting, it's things that I would retweet. If I look at the positions that they're taking, for the most part.
But again, it's an agenda.
Okay, the fake seal.
Yes.
Was all right-wing stuff. The last two fake SF guys were all right-wing stuff. All very conservative, all reposting Fox News, reposting some of the same people that I follow.
So again, an agenda, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to go, wow, this guy's making some great points, so I'm going to let it slide. No. He's full of shit.
He's full of shit.
So I'm going to expose him, And I'll tell you something else. I'm not going to say who it is, but I had a guy thrown into my my DMs today. Hey man, need to check this guy out. And he's got resist in his bio and everything else. A legit former 18 Alpha, former SF guy.
And that's the thing, like the use of service to forward an agenda. Is not a new thing.
No.
But I think the technique, is very drive-by on Twitter, where, like you said, on some of these others, Facebook, you have to put a little more effort into it. And the people that are doing it aren't putting that kind of effort. The guy that's putting the effort into it, he's living a lie.
Yeah.
He's like trying to, she is trying to get something out of it.
Well, even those guys, and you know what? At some point, I'll have you come back because the last time I did an episode on this was with John. But at some point, I'll have you come back and we'll talk about it in depth. What really amazes me about these guys, and I'll leave it here, is that they've been bullshitting for so long that then when a guy like me talks to them, they think they can fall back on the same bullshit.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, dude. It's like you might be able to bullshit the PTA meeting that way. But I lived the life you're lying about. So when you say things like that, I know you're completely full of it. And the guy that Guardians of the Green Beret just busted out that was acting as an expert witness, faking being an 18 Bravo, he pulled that same thing when he got confronted. He's like, oh, and it's like, no, dude, you can't. All right, guys, we're about out of time. Brother, thank you for being here. I'm definitely going to have you back. I want to do an MMA show with you. I got an idea. I want to get you in here, and I'll get Robin Black on the phone. I've got an idea that I want to talk to you about how I think we can fix scoring and judging in MMA, and we'll talk about that at some point.
You have my attention.
So interesting. That's a little teaser for a future episode. Just a quick reminder, everybody, go to sheepdogresponse.com. Check out our upcoming course dates. Quick reminder of those. Coming up August 22nd to 26th, Post Falls, Idaho. Hoffman, North Carolina, September 21st, 23rd. Palm Bay, Florida, October 8th through 11th. And week before SHOT Show in Las Vegas, Nevada. That's January 16th through 20th. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Make sure you go subscribe to the podcast, download all, leave us a review. The more colorful you are, the more likely that I will mention your name in an upcoming episode. And I'm going to leave you today with a quote from H. Jackson Brown Jr., who said, "The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today." Remember that. Until next time, be a sheepdog.